Greetings and welcome to this episode of Everyday Enchantment. I am your host, Stacey Andon. And today, I know I say this every episode, but I really am looking forward to Nona Jordan coming onto the podcast today to talk about embodiment. And here's what I want to share with you. If you've ever put your ear down on the earth, Mother Earth, and felt all that love, all that warm breath, like just wrapping you in such ease and comfort and support. That is Nona Jordan. She's also a master certified coach. She's an author. Her focus is helping business women, very soulful business women like myself, really create lives where they can prosper. And I can't wait for you to meet her. Greetings!
Hello. Wow, what an introduction, Stacey.
Oh my
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And it's obviously Twins Day today.
It is. We
we, to-
matched.
we totally matched in a planet. So we're just in training to energy already before we even get started. I was in the shower when I thought about it. I was like, how do I want to welcome Nona to the podcast? And that image of like being so connected to Mother Earth energy, it just embodies you and everything that you share with all of us on the planet. So thank you so much for the honor of coming on today.
Oh, thank you so much. I am excited to talk with you today. Thank you
Oh,
for
I
inviting
love it.
me.
So
Yeah.
I want to start with, we're going to kind of put a pin in embodiment and we'll start somewhere. How would you, if somebody was like, okay, what are we talking about? How would you define it? Where would you start with explaining it to somebody in the kind of the short notes version?
The embodiment?
Yeah, embodiment. Because
Oh,
somebody might
yeah.
be like, oh, I think I'm embodied, but I don't know. These
Right,
terms kind
right.
of float around out there.
Sure.
What does it
Well,
mean to you?
to me, what embodiment means is that we are present to the sensations, both interoceptive and proprioceptive, in our world at any given time. So it's a real felt sense of being present in the body. And that I think would be the way I would describe it.
I love that. And it's so funny to me, well, for me in my own journey, because years ago when I started becoming a life coach and I was eating and drinking and just couldn't get
Mhm.
enough. However, you will find this, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. There was a mind body coach, call whatever we had back then. And I remember like being 5 minutes in and I was like, I don't even remember what she was asking us to do. Like
Oh,
probably just come in, feel your feet, whatever it was. I got off the call. The only time I ever in a program ever like just got, and I was like, my body, everything in me was like, I'm not ready for this yet.
mm, mhm,
And as you know, because we've worked together, this process of coming in and allowing, you have a beautiful, again, I completely relate to the definition, but to do it, to be
mm,
embodied, I don't know if anybody else has had a challenge, but me, I have had the challenge of coming back in and
mhm.
staying present because it's been uncomfortable at times.
Oh, I I hear you 100%. Because so much of our lives, we're often encouraged, told, um, we have experiences that make it much safer to not be embodied,
Yeah,
right? Um,
absolutely.
may I tell a little
You may,
story?
you may.
Okay, so when I was in college, so I, like many people, experienced a lot of trauma and wounding in my childhood. And I went to my first yoga class when I was in college. Had I had a tick, a tick in my eye, and I was so stressed out
Mm.
about what I was doing in college. And I was like, I'm going to go to yoga because that is going to help me be calm
Mhm.
while I'm doing this thing that I really didn't want to be doing. However, my first yoga class, The first time I laid down in Shavasana, I burst into tears because I was like, this is what it feels like to be in my body.
Mm.
And then it was like terrifying. I didn't want to go back to yoga, to your point,
Mm.
because something in my body was like, oh hell no. Now I kept trying to go back. I kept trying to go back, but I think it's really important to acknowledge that our bodies are so wise, and that when we resist, we have to honor that, right? Like, and
Yeah.
that's probably one of the very first steps to being embodied, is being like, I don't feel like I'm here, and
Mhm.
that's okay. Like,
That's
even
beautiful.
recognizing it as a step towards embodiment.
I absolutely, because I recognized, like, I was like, oh, I know what's going on, but it doesn't mean I'm
Yeah.
going to talk myself into staying. And
Hmm.
one of the other things that I think I learned early on, and it kind of correlates with your story as well, too, is the body is the, at least for me, the truth teller.
Hmm.
When you start to come in, this is like my first marriage. My first marriage, my body knew for a long time I wanted nothing to do with this man anymore. My head kept saying, "But you said forever, and you did this, and how are you? How, what?" Da, 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 da. It took years for me to feel safe enough to come in and listen and to again honor that truth. There's so much I think it's I don't know, easy, but it's easy to kind of stay disconnected and be all up in your
Hmm.
head and listen to whatever story you want to tell yourself when you're disconnected from your body. When you're embodied or you come back in on a regular basis, you usually like it's like opening the door, like, hey, guess what you haven't been hey, guess what you haven't really been wanting to see or acknowledge or what have you. It doesn't have to be something terrible, but there's usually something there that I'm like, oh, and I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, totally. So it makes sense
Yeah.
that there is a part of us that resists
Mhm.
being in the body, because yes, I agree. I think our bodies are the ultimate truth tellers. They have so much wisdom, but sometimes getting to the part where it feels good, it
Yeah.
is painful, because we have made decisions perhaps based on our shoulds, or
Mhm.
because of cultural expectations, and therefore we have things that need to be addressed
Yeah.
before we can do that safely.
I totally agree. And I think what I realized, I didn't realize it at the time, but that the reason why I think that phone call or that call was so uncomfortable for me was there was a lot of trauma
Mm,
that was stacked somewhere in my body
yeah,
that I
yeah.
had not even begun to be like I put it in the back closet of my life or my
Yeah.
body, wherever, and kept it there because it wasn't safe. I never knew how, it just there's so many reasons. And the older I got and the more I kind of got into this world of like, okay, take a breath, come into yourself, it was like, okay, little by little, almost like little cracks of it, almost not a
Mm,
huge waterfall. Well,
right.
sometimes, but generally speaking, my body was like, we won't douse her with it all at once.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times, I know probably you probably done this as well, but when you work with people, like that numbness to me, it a lot of times it's protective measure.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong. Like people say, why didn't I do this? Or I've said this to myself, why haven't I done this sooner or what have you? And it's like
Mm,
you do it when you're ready. Like you'll
yeah.
meet yourself in those moments.
Gosh, that is so true. I mean, so, so true. I love that example, and I think that is, yeah, it's so true. We have to honor it. Like, there is a reason all of those parts, the
Mhm.
parts of us that resist, are protective. They have nothing but our best interests at heart,
Mm.
and we move at the pace of ourselves. We
Yeah.
have to move at the pace of
We
our
have to.
own body,
It's
right?
not gonna work.
Right. I don't know about you. I have spent a lot of my young life in particular, and still now I find myself wanting to move at a pace that isn't my own pace. It's the pace of should, it's the pace of culture, it's the pace of hustle, it's, whatever it is, we can feel compelled to move at a pace that is
Yeah.
not our own.
That's so true, and I think for me, well, I used years ago, I think like 2018, 5 years ago, the word of the year, which I was doing for a while before it became kind of a more popular,
Right.
and and anyway, I chose flow in 2018. I was like, "Oh, I really wanna be in this beautiful flow," and then I've just realized, like, every year, it's like, no, flow isn't, like, just a year. Like, flow is, maybe this whole lifetime, and
Right.
to your point, what I hear in my messages in this embodiment practice is slow down. Always slow down,
Mhm.
simplify, slow down, because again, you can't out you I wanna go a million miles an hour, which if you knew me 10, 15 years ago, you'd be like, "I don't know how that woman does it." I think about what I did back then, and I'm like, "How did I do all of that? I don't know. I think
Right.
I need to take a nap today because of whatever happened, 'cause I didn't rest at all, and I
Yeah.
knew nothing about slowing down, and I think
Yeah.
the more I practice embodiment, because to me it's a practice, right? We're
Mm,
always just kind of coming back in and meeting ourselves in a moment. The
right.
more we do that, it is this kind of like you're not rushing, you're not doing it to check a box. You really are gifting yourself this time and space to really feel and experience yourself. Like, what is it like to be me in this moment?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I know you and I have had some conversations recently about something that's really been alive for me. The language of destroying the patriarchy, right? Like dismantling systems of oppression.
Mm,
They talk about power with instead of power over.
yeah,
And one of the things that I have recognized just very recently is that so much of my own relationship with my body has been about, I want you to do this. I
yes.
want you to move like that. I want you to push through this. And
Mm,
that's power over. And what you're really speaking to is power with, which
mm,
is being able to listen, being able to slow down,
mm,
being able to honor what
mm,
it
mm,
is that your body really needs.
yeah.
Yeah.
That reminds me, a couple of years ago, I was in a mastermind and I realized, I went into the mastermind with like one objective, and then like that wasn't exactly what happened, but then something more miraculous, like for my own journey, happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I realized that this relation exactly what you're talking about, this power over, which got modeled on so many different planes,
Gosh, right.
and but I was doing it with myself, like, and
Mm,
also to perform very performance based as
yes.
well. So it was like I needed my business to perform a certain way. I need my body to perform a certain way. And it was like, so all of that I realized, like all of that abuse that used to be like external, other people or other things doing it to me, so to speak.
Hmm.
I was had internalized this model and was doing it to myself. I was like, this is the terrible. I mean, I had a lot of compassion, but I was like, this is
Right.
not how I want to operate. And
Right.
really recognizing that, which took me a couple deep breaths to really
Yeah.
lead into that and say, okay, where do I go from here?
Yeah.
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 So I love
Absolutely.
that. So if people are listening and they wanna know, because they might be curious like me, what embodiment practice like, what do you have practices you do what do you do during the day or on the course of a week that really helps nurture these, coming back in, being present? I'm sure people are going to be curious.
Mm-mm-mm.
Mm,
Yeah, well, I have a practice that I do every morning where I sit actually in the chair that's right back here. And I start always with the breath and scanning the body and kind of like checking in with a friend, right? Like,
mm,
how are you? How are you feeling today? Like, what's going on in here? And attending to at least maybe a better word instead of attending to is noticing and just welcoming,
mm,
like, whatever is happening. If I'm feeling anxious or I've got a pain in my shoulder or, my breath is shallow, just taking the time to be with what is
Mhm.
happening.
Yeah.
And for me, that is the foundational practice of every day. And I feel it when I don't do it.
Yeah.
Um, I also am a big believer, I think, especially as someone who's had a who's had a traumatic background. One of the things I found really, really important years and years ago, start exercise, like kickboxing, strength training, ways to kind of, and for me, for many years, it was about expressing anger, moving angry energy out of my body. But what I've found is that that is one of the things that is just key for my mental health.
Mhm.
And but one of the things that's really shifted for me over the years of exercising is when I don't ever exercise outside of I don't push. Like, I'm doing yoga even when I'm exercising. Let me say that. Like this morning, I was doing a strength training workout and it was moving kind of fast. I was doing it, led by a service that I use. And it's like, okay, where is my range of ease? Right?
Mhm.
Where does it feel good in my body to move? If I'm feeling tight somewhere, I don't like push through it, right? Because if we're talking about power width, like,
Mhm.
well, that means I'm doing that in anytime I'm moving, anytime I'm up and about, I'm listening for that,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Um, so being in awareness with that. And then during the day, I often lay down and do some breath work, like at some
Ooh,
point during the
I love
day. Yeah.
this idea.
Yes. Yes. I lay down and I do some breath work and then check in with my body again, like I do at the beginning of the day. So, I mean, those are pretty standard things that happen in every single day of my life. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. You know, it's interesting to me. I want to pull a thread of something you said about
Mhm.
anger. So, for the longest time, it did never felt safe for me to be
Mm.
angry
Yeah,
for a variety of reasons that I will not go down that rabbit hole today.
totally.
However, what I found, not so much this year and maybe last year, but like the last couple years, it's like all that anger, which also had to do very much with people doing things to my body,
Mm.
right? We live in a culture in a world
Yeah.
where things have been done to me that I was like, and again, probably at the time, people were like, just keep going, keep, don't let that sidetrack you into a
Right.
downward spot. Like, and so what I found one of the things in my, as I got more comfortable going into the deep end of embodiment, I was like, I'm really freaking angry.
Yeah.
And I can remember walking down the trail, which is my kind of same thing. It's like non-negotiable. I'm walking every morning with a dog in the woods and I'm grounded. I'm feeling the feet. I'm doing all of that, those check-ins. And I can remember just like yelling
Mhm.
and people whatever, people were walking by, they're probably like, "That woman usually says nothing. What is going on with her today?" And but it felt so good actually to do it out in Mother Nature, to just
Mm.
I feel so supported when the trees are around me and the wind is
Yeah.
whipping around to be just, like, letting it go,
Right.
and I do say for a while there, I was really angry, like, it had bubbled up for a long time.
Ah. Yeah.
And I think that that's something as we change these power dynamics,
Mm.
that something like that could surface and maybe catch you. I mean, it kinda caught because I was like, "I'm not angry today. Why am I so angry all of a sudden?" And it
Yeah.
was like layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of things that have happened to me where it was like, just bite your tongue. And we know this because you and I have talked about this. I have
Mm.
tight jaw, tight. It's like bite your tongue, bite your tongue, bite your tongue. And it just absolutely created this space within me
Yeah.
that was like at some point, think of like the Green Mile, right? Where it's just like it all comes
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I mean, what you're speaking to as well is that our bodies
Mm,
hold those memories.
yeah.
And yet culturally and often in our families, we are told anger and spiritually even Anger is
Yes.
bad, it's destructive, it's low vibration, whatever we are told about anger, but it's an emotion that we
Yeah.
have as humans. It's protective. And
Yes.
when we have moments in our lives that we are unable to protect ourselves, our bodies, our amazing bodies, hold that energy until we can feel it.
Yeah.
And I think one of the issues in particular with women around anger is that we believe, because of how anger has been directed towards us,
Mm,
that anger is destructive. But
that's a
anger
great
is
point.
just an energy. It's just a feeling. It just is telling us that we need to set a boundary, that something has been done that's wrong. It's an invitation to use our voice or our bodies to stop something from
Yeah.
happening. And if we can't, then there are things that we need to do with that. But
Right. Absolutely.
the thing that you're talking about, going out in nature and expressing that anger, a
Mhm.
lot of women they won't do it because they're so afraid of their anger, and what it means about them that they're angry. I went through a period of time where we'd be talking about anger. I'd be talking about anger with clients, and they'd be like, "Oh, well, you don't seem angry." I'm like, I am angry every single day, and I work with it single day because I'm not expressing it on you. I need to
Yes.
move that energy for me, you
Mhm.
know, to stay in a state of energetic and emotional currency.
Yeah. And I think that's where the exercise or whatever movement, whatever we want to
Yeah.
call that, is
Yep.
such a potent practice. Because
Yes.
for me, when things bubble up and I can feel like a little bit like I lost my breath, right? I can't
Mhm.
quite, then that going back outside, moving my body and
Yeah.
just coming back into that generally does ease whatever whatever big thing comes up
Right.
and then kind of settles back down. It's interesting too because one of the other things I was thinking about when you were sharing about this kind of like overly pushing ourselves, right? Embodiment isn't like how quick, how fast, how much better can we be? Right? We're not. That's not the point. And yet, I can always think back to like Goodwill Hunting. Have you seen that movie with Will?
Oh, it's been so long.
Oh
Yes, but
gosh,
I've
what
seen
is
it.
Matt Damon? Sorry, I don't know why I'm
Yeah.
saying Will. Matt Damon and
Ben
gosh,
Affleck.
yes, and the counselor who's no longer Robin Williams.
Yes.
And there's a scene with Robin Williams and Matt Damon's character who was also abused, and he was telling Robin Williams's character that like his stepfather or whoever would put like three choices: the wrench, the belt, and whatever the other thing was. And he was like, and I always pick the wrench because like he was like, "F you, I'm gonna just
Mhm.
endure the pain." And I think, and tell me where I'm wrong or if I'm off on this, but I think we as culture, as women, have endured so much pain
Mhm.
that I don't know. Sometimes I get into that, like, yeah, you can't break me, like, and
Yeah.
that doesn't do me any service because then I'm pushing my own body, I'm pushing my
Yeah.
own self, and I'm not actually really listening. It's in reaction to, which, like you said, is a very different thing than being in the honest or just the clean energy of like what anger, how it wants to move through us. This is like,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Right. And what you're talking about, that culture of enduring,
Mhm.
is also reflected in how we tend to think. I mean, hustle culture, that's
Mhm.
about enduring.
Yeah.
No pain, no gain. That's about enduring. And not that there isn't value in being able to do those things, but for them to become a standard of
Yeah.
success is a level of insanity that's hard to grasp when
Yeah.
you think about what what is possible when we aren't hurting ourselves, or when we aren't in pain, or when we feel supported, or do you know what I mean? Like,
I know
so
exactly what you mean.
more is available to us. Yeah. So
You've been teaching me this because again, this is what I'm learning from you. It's like slowing down. Like there isn't this like, well, there is out in the world the good bad bucket, right? And it's like there's my little Willy Wonka. It's like you're a good egg or you're a bad egg, and if you slow down, you're a bad egg. You're gonna lose whatever it is. And you keep coming helping me come back to this idea of Stace, there is no other place, there is no yardstick or what have you embodiment. It's not the school teacher writing down a report card. It's really just about the mess, what I would call the messiness of the present moment.
Right. Yeah.
And wrapped in that, tell me what you think about this. Wrapped in that, for me, all of this whole embodiment work has been my other, well, maybe my one of my favorite F words, forgiveness,
Yeah.
because what I also grappled with as I started going deeper into embodiment is I was mad at myself for doing
Mm,
all these things to myself, right? There was a part of me that was really judging me. I shouldn't have done that. How did I, how did I get, kind of consumed by these practices of hustle and
mm,
grind and pain and you name it?
mm.
And I really had to slow super down in order to meet that part of me that was judging the part of me that was doing her best in a moment.
For sure.
And I think sometimes that's can be some of the hardest because we are so hard on ourselves
Yeah.
that even though we know about we know all these systems and what they've done, and yet when it comes to our own compassion, our own love and self-acceptance, that to me is some of the, I don't know, the messiest places for me to kind of tangle with.
Oh, you know, I so appreciate that you brought that up because you're right. I think we're so hard on ourselves when we recognize that all of this stuff that we don't agree with externally in the world and a culture, that we've embodied it and directed it towards ourselves, right? And how could we not have done it though? Like that's the thing I always say. It's like, how could we not have done it? Of course we did
Yes.
that because that is the pool we swim in, right? And so doing something different is an act of revolution in many ways, right? It is
It
in
is.
complete opposition to what we are told by the overculture. And so I think that I'm so glad that you have compassion for yourself because I think one of the things that that bootstrapping nation that we are, like if your fault, right? It's your fault.
Yeah,
You
I
did
did it
it.
wrong.
You did it wrong. You should have known better. But
Mhm.
the fact is, it's like, well, but we live in a system that demonstrates those principles every single day and we're doing something different, and of course we're going to feel confused and like, wow, why did I do that for so long? But if like, how could
Yeah.
we not have?
I have another little paradoxal, like with that on one side
Yeah.
of me, and the other side, I also believe that a lot of us who are here really to help transform and change the planet for the better,
Yeah.
um, have kind of come in not undercover, but you come in, you got to experience what the current state is, and
Gotcha.
not just intellectually, right? Really know what I mean. Gosh, know what trauma is, know what it's like to be disembodied, know what it's like to really feel physical pain or fill in the blank a lot of the things, not again for us just to be like, oh yeah, I suffered too, but really to say, okay, now that we really have this awareness and have this perspective, we really can help each other
Yeah.
be in different energy states, be in different power relationships with the planet, with ourselves, with the world at large.
Hmm.
So as much as I'm like, this is very individual, but this also feels very much
Oh, it
like,
is.
yeah, like, hey, this is the best research project I've been doing for 40 some years.
Right. Yes, it is. It is amazing. Completely. I agree. Yeah,
Oh,
no, I mean, and what the culture tells us and what we've done, I mean, individual is the collective is the
yeah,
individual.
true, true, true,
Yeah.
true, true, true.
So I completely agree.
So if somebody's listening, I want to just ask this question.
Mm.
What if people are struggling a little bit, like where would you say for somebody to get started if they're like, Oh, I really, they're interested in what we're talking about, but maybe they have had resistance. I
Mm.
know you mentioned like just recognizing the resistance can be part of the first step. Is there anything else that you would offer to somebody wanting to take like a little step deeper in to these practices and to the kind of this, it's a way of life to me.
Mm, mhm. One of the things that I always, especially when we're talking about embodiment, I always encourage people to think about what is the thing that you want to do that brings you pleasure?
Mm,
Like, what would feel good? Like, so much of our relationship with our body is like, you have to push, you have to go, you have to exercise. And I
mm,
don't really think about it that way. It's like our bodies are made to move. But, it could be laying down and taking a nap is what you want to do. Like, can you give yourself permission to take a 5-minute nap? Can you go sit outside for 5 minutes? Can you give yourself 5 minutes of
mhm,
pleasure in
mhm.
your body? That's
Yeah.
it. Like,
Yep.
can you do that? And that's enough. Even if it's 3 minutes, just giving yourself permission, like recognizing that you have resistance and then like, okay, I get it. Like what's 3 to 5 minutes of something that I want, not that I should do, not that I ought to do, but that I have wanted and perhaps denied myself.
I love that. I remember doing was speaking to a group of teachers years ago, and I said something similar to them, and I swear I thought they were going to hurt me.
I know,
Because
right?
it's such like they were like, how could you? And I've been a teacher, so I was like, hey, I got street cred. I know what it's like to be a teacher, and I think that's why they didn't hurt me. But it was this idea of, and I used to do this. Now since COVID everything has changed, but I would speak to teachers a lot locally, and it was always I would say something like that. Start small, start 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and just what is it? Maybe you just do absolutely nothing to sit with yourself, whether you're bored, maybe anger's, who knows what's going to bubble up. Sometimes
Totally.
I just sit with myself and all of a sudden it's like tears are welling. I'm like,
Mhm.
what? And I really do try to practice that analyzing. I am not perfect with that, but it's like,
Yeah.
can we just let each frequency of energy kind of move through
Mm.
us like clouds or, whatever, however the imagery is, and not have to stop and be like, well, that was blah, blah. Like, it doesn't even
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
But so those people who are saying, that sounds really nice and I can and I should, it's like, are you gonna get to the end? Like to me, are we gonna get to the end, whatever that is for you, for me, and for us? And you're like, well, I never made time for that. And it's like, I don't think anybody's gonna get to the end and go, I'm so glad I worked myself to the bone. I'm so glad they
Yeah,
took
right?
every ounce of my soul. It's like, take it back. Take your 5 minutes is a doable amount of time. Take it, claim it, own it, be brave, and like you said, be a revolutionary. It really is a radical act
Mm.
to do these things when the chaos in the world around us wants us to be distracted and disconnected and
Yeah,
what have you for variety of long list reasons.
absolutely. Amen. You just said it. You said it, sister.
Well, this has been so much fun because, again, I could talk to you probably on the podcast for forever, be like 3 days in, and I probably still have questions and topics and themes and things like that. But I always honor the time constraints that I set for myself, generally speaking. So I'm sure people are going to want to step into the Nona world if they haven't already, or they're not already swimming out there with you. How do they do that? How do they get in touch or get connected with you? What do you got?
Right.
What do you got going
What have
on
I
right
got?
now?
Well,
Yeah, that you
there's
want to share.
really two primary ways. You can go to my website at nonajordan.com, or my Substack, which is nonajordan.substack.com. And I would say those are like the two primary ways. And you can find me on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube through those avenues as well.
Sweetness. I think that, well, first of all, we didn't even hit on this, but you are a phenomenal writer as well.
Thank you.
One of the things that I love about your writing, which is very different than mine. So mine is, I tend to go shorter, but I like to sink my teeth into your writing. Like
Mm,
anytime, I always set special time aside because it's not one of those things where you can just, read in a minute. I really want to read it. Like I know you just wrote something on abundance not that long ago, like in the last
mm,
week. And I was like, oh, I looked at it and I'm like, no, I want to go back to that because I want to really sit with everything that you said. So if you don't know Nona's writing, I highly recommend it, following her, getting whatever the technical logistics are on Substack, do it, to do the thing,
Thank you.
because you will leave again. You offer that embodiment through your writing. I don't know if you've ever thought about it that way, but that
I
presence that you
haven't.
spoke to, it's the energy of it comes through like in each, email that I receive from you. So that's just a beautiful gift.
Well, thank you. I so appreciate hearing that. That's lovely.
You are so
So
well. You are one of my again, if everybody doesn't know, one of my coaches and mentors, and I just adore you and have learned so much from you over the years. So thank you so much. I again could talk for ages, but I will wrap it up. And until next time, we will see you on the next episode. So thank you so much.
thank you, Stacey.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in. Get all the delicious details and links we've mentioned in this episode in the show notes below. If you'd like to chat about this episode or learn more about how to work with me, come visit me in my private Facebook group, Everyday Enchantment, or check out my website, staceyandon.com, where you can find out more about my Leap of Faith coaching, my Map Makers group program, and the School of Intuitive Magic. Plus a special shout out for all the production and editing of this show by Richard Wilmore. That's it for now, love. Here's to living a life enchanted. See you soon.